On December 9th, 2020, Tony Xu stood at the New York Stock Exchange and watched his company close at $189 a share. It was up 86% on its first day of trading. Market capitalization was $72 billion. The crowd was ecstatic. The problem was the company had lost $667 million the year before. It had never posted a full-year profit, not once. And somewhere in its own initial public offering filing, a document that raised $3.4 billion that day, DoorDash had quietly written that the circumstances that have accelerated the growth of our business, stemming from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, may not continue in the future. Nobody on television quoted it. The market ignored it entirely. So here is the real question. What exactly were people buying? DoorDash started in 2013 as PaloAltoDelivery.com. 4 Stanford students raised $120,000 from Y Combinator and launched a website with local menus. By 2020, they had clawed their way to 50% of the U.S. food delivery market, up from 17% in 2018. That is genuinely impressive. The model had internal logic. Aggregate restaurant supply, aggregate hungry people with phones take a percentage of every transaction and scale until the unit economics turn. DashPass, the subscription service, was growing. Suburban coverage was ahead of every competitor. Revenue had tripled in a single year, from $885 million in 2019 to $2.9 billion in 2020. In the S1 filing, Xu described a local commerce operating system, not a food delivery app. He invoked his mother, a Chinese immigrant who came to America with a few $100s and who worked multiple jobs to become a doctor. DoorDash, he wrote, existed to empower people like her. Wall Street bought the story. The market rewarded it. Xu became a billionaire before noon. But here is what the story skips. Before the IPO, before the pandemic, before the $72 billion. Between May 2017 and September 2019, DoorDash was running a different operation. When customers tipped their driver through the app, the checkout screen displayed this message: Dashers will always receive 100% of the tip. That was not true. If a driver was guaranteed $10 for a delivery and a customer tipped $6, DoorDash paid $4 from its own funds and applied the $6 tip to fulfill the rest of the guarantee. The driver still received exactly $10. The customer's tip had not enriched the driver. It had cut DoorDash's labor cost. The disclosure explaining this was buried in online documents. It was invisible during checkout and inaccessible at the moment of decision. This ran for over 2 years, across millions of orders, while the customer-facing message said the exact opposite. The New York Attorney General eventually called it a deceptive pay model. Settlement: $16.75 million, covering 63,000 New York drivers. Washington, D.C. settled separately for $2.5 million. Illinois settled for $11.25 million. Chicago settled in November 2025 for $18 million. That case also added charges for listing restaurants on the platform without their consent, misleading customers about fees, and imposing a Chicago fee that was not actually a city-mandated charge. That last part matters. Starting in 2018, DoorDash listed restaurants on its platform without asking them. A Chicago restaurant sued for trademark infringement after its logo and menu appeared without permission. In 2020, Lona's Lil Eats in St. Louis filed suit after DoorDash listed them, let customers see them, then told customers they were too far away whenever someone tried to order. The restaurant was 200 feet from the delivery address. The real reason was that Lona's had not paid DoorDash's fees. Chicago's 2021 lawsuit accused DoorDash of doing this citywide, listing non-partners to inflate the apparent size of the marketplace, redirecting those customers to paying partners and collecting the commission. DoorDash was not growing because customers loved it more. Part of its supply was manufactured without consent. Part of its loyalty was purchased. In 2019, DoorDash spent 101% of its revenues on marketing in a single quarter. By the third quarter 2022, marketing was $446 million, 35% of revenues, more than 3 times what is considered healthy. The moat was partly a mirage built on someone else's money. Now here is the actual business model, translated plainly. Restaurants in America operate on average profit margins of 3% to 9%. DoorDash charges commissions of 15% to 30% per order. On a $50 delivery order with a 25% commission, the restaurant receives $29.50 before food cost, labor, or rent. A restaurant capturing a 15% margin on a direct sale would make $7.50 on that same $50 order. On DoorDash, they may be at break-even or below zero. A Wharton study covering 2012 through 2018 found that the entry of delivery platforms significantly increases the likelihood of restaurants closing their doors. The restaurants most at risk were the least efficient. Independent operators with thin margins were hit hardest, exactly the kind of small business Xu described helping in his initial public offering letter. And the trap is this: the restaurants cannot easily leave. DoorDash controls customer discovery. If you are not on the app, you are invisible to a growing share of demand. The customer relationship restaurants spent years building now belongs to a platform charging 30% to let them speak to their own regulars. So restaurants need more volume to offset the per-order drag. More volume means more DoorDash. More DoorDash means deeper dependence. The dependency grows while the margin shrinks. Meanwhile, DoorDash itself lost $461 million in 2020, $468 million in 2021, and $1.365 billion in 2022. By September 2022, the accumulated deficit stood at $2.82 billion. The company had purchased Finland's Wolt for €7 billion in 2021, expanding internationally while burning cash domestically. The only quarter of GAAP profitability in its entire history before 2024 was Q2 of 2020, $23 million. It took a global pandemic that physically closed restaurants to produce it. The company's own lawyers had written in the S-1 filing that it might never be profitable. In November 2022, DoorDash laid off 1,250 corporate employees. The platform story was running out of pandemic to hide behind. So here is who paid. Independent restaurant owners absorbed commissions that eat their entire margin, with no access to the customer data generated on their own sales. Dashers are classified as contractors, with no benefits and no unemployment insurance. 900,000 of them settled a misclassification suit for roughly $130 each, while Xu's compensation package the prior year was reported as $413 million. Customers paid roughly 40% more per order than a direct purchase, and retail shareholders who bought in at $189 on December 9, 2020 believed they were buying infrastructure. DoorDash told everyone it was building the operating system for local commerce. What it actually built was a toll booth placed directly in front of the customer relationship that restaurants used to own for free. The restaurants are not DoorDash's partners. They are its inventory. And the bill for that arrangement, settled quietly in city after city, state after state, was always going to land somewhere other than the top of the cap table.